in the fucking 20s, during Prohibition. We're doing the same shit. We're telling people what they can't do. They're not listening, and we're feeding organized crime. We're feeding crime that is filling a vacuum, just like it's going on in Mexico right now. Just like these poor fucking people that live in these border towns in Mexico. It's all being fueled by the fact that drugs are illegal, and they're selling these drugs to America. If all of a sudden that changed, how much of an impact would that have on police?
It would be striking. Again, that's 90% of what I did. So if we would stop doing that, it would be incredibly advantageous.
But what would they do with you guys? See what I'm saying?
Let's focus. Let's investigate violence. Let's figure out how we're going to fix things.
Okay.
So use some science to say we have a problem. What do we do to actually solve this problem? Instead of being fueled by ideology, what are we actually doing?
Well, you saw this recent thing when Obama's going to release all these nonviolent drug offenders. I mean, that's a good step.
I concur completely.
That's a great step.
Point 1. That's a good start. Okay, let me start this off by saying that I also don't believe the drug war is serving any purpose other than to give people jobs. The DEA is a huge agency, just like any agency of the government, and so naturally is resistant to dissolution or letting go of power. Having thrown out my disclaimer, here's my problem with the term nonviolent drug offender and releasing them en masse from prison. The term nonviolent drug offender doesn't mean that the drug offenders aren't violent people. It means that the crime for which they were incarcerated this time wasn't labeled a violent crime by the Department of Justice. The term nonviolent is the term the DOJ uses to classify drug traffickers, drug possession, burglary, and larceny. Activities which don't exactly breed trust and kindness in people. So, despite the fact that Joe would like you to believe that these offenders getting released are all peace-loving hippies, wrongfully incarcerated on a bad rap, or railroaded by an overzealous, bigoted country sheriff's deputy fresh off a turn officiating the latest lynching, I know, a little heavy with the exaggeration, but so is the belief that all these people are good at heart. That probably isn't the case for the most part. I guess the instant agreement between Joe and Michael Wood Jr. regarding these people being released struck me as a little too influenced by Joe's, and I'm guessing Mr. Wood's recreational activities, which prompted a little devil's advocate response from me.
Now, if he does that, and if the next step is obviously not arresting nonviolent drug offenders, not arresting them at all, like there's no more arrests for drugs, unless there's violence involved, and then you're arresting someone for violence, which is totally reasonable.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they're violent over fucking stuffed animals or cocaine. Who gives a shit? They're violent, right? They're hurting somebody. That's why they're arrested. How much would that transform neighborhoods? How much would that transform this entire cycle of people going from communities that are just engulfed in crime and becoming a part of that themselves because they were unlucky enough to be born there?
Point 2. Unlucky enough to be born there. The idea that being born into poverty in a ghetto is somehow accompanied by a force that keeps you in that poverty, eventually spiraling into crime, drug trafficking, and possibly a violent death, is a little too deterministic for me to take seriously. Oh, I know people will come out of the woodworks to tell me that I shouldn't talk about an experience I don't know anything about or haven't lived, but as a white male, I'm used to it. According to those people, I shouldn't talk about anything but plotting the marginalization of the next group of brown people with all my country club buddies on the family yacht off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. Ha! Joke's on them, that was last Tuesday, so my week is free. So, what is the difference between people that were born and live in the ghetto and the people that got out? Is it a matter of not wanting to get out? Or not knowing to get out? Of being afraid of getting labeled a traitor to the black community, or an actual inability to leave? A person is ruled by complex emotions and shards of logic only known to themselves, so I know that one answer will never account for everyone that got out, but there has to be some common traits here. Oh well, since I'll never know the struggle of being poor due to my blinding whiteness and all, I guess I really don't care.
I think it's the biggest thing we could do as a nation. I only put Wolfpack and getting money out of politics ahead of it because I question that we can actually do that as money continues to fuel the politicians.
And Wolfpack is what's set up by the Young Turks, right?
Right.
Yeah, which is fucking fantastic. I love that. There's another thing that my friend Steve Hilton put together called Crowd Pack, where you could see exactly which politicians are being supported by what, where they're getting their donations from, and what they vote on. Get a real clear analysis of their position based on influence, based on the amount of money they're receiving and where it's coming from. So it's all shocking shit because I just would hope that as we move forward as a human race, as we move forward as civilization moves forward, and we embrace technology and we understand that we have more access to information now than any human beings that have ever lived ever. And to keep living the same way, even though we have all these obvious problems right in front of us, is ridiculous. I mean, it's literally the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. That is the definition of insanity, right?
Totally agree. There's no way around it that we're doing this wrong. And that's why I'm saying, the only reason I'm saying this is because we are doing it so wrong, and it's so blatantly wrong. It's like you have to have a cognitive bias to not see this. Like it's really the older generation. I kind of have pretty much confidence that our generations and younger will be able to solve this once we get in power. But how they don't see this now is absolutely baffling. And I think they don't see it because it doesn't affect them. So why should they care?
Point 3. Right and righteous. This is a sign that someone wants you to think second and feel first. This is behavior that has been used by Martin Luther King Jr. and Hitler, with very little deviance in methodology between the two. Michael Wood Jr. is looking to convince you that because you aren't your parents, and because being old somehow makes you automatically wrong, that you are capable of righting the wrongs as seen in society. That youthful fire and passion will make your actions correct, even if your actions are guided mostly by apparent injustices, instead of the more plodding and slower certainty of reacting with facts instead of gut feelings and wanting to be the little guy that stands up to the big bad corporation. Imagine the movie poster for Rocky IV for reference, because everyone wants to be Rocky. Having the goal to combat inequality is great and all, but doing so at the expense of an actual plan or a systemic way of introducing equality without relying on putting another group on the outs to do so is the road to fascism. Equality for one group should not come at the expense of another. To do so would be to swing the pendulum far away, giving it the momentum to crush everything and anyone on its way back, good or not.
Were you still on the force when that guy got choked to death in Staten Island?
I don't think I was when it was Eric Garner.
Yeah, Eric Garner. That one drove me fucking crazy because there's a video of it and you get to see the fact that this guy was so innocent. There's nothing wrong with what he was doing. He's just hanging out.
2 cents of tax evasion or
Well,
something.
yeah, tax evasion. Well, then, exactly. The idea that these cops are going to choke a guy to death because he's not paying taxes on loose cigarettes. Not only that, he didn't even have any loose cigarettes on him. And they wrestled him to the ground and choked him and then tried to say that it wasn't a chokehold. I mean, that one just highlights the difference between the way they treated that guy versus the way they would treat one of their own.
Point 4. One of their own. Was, in Eric Garner's case, the chokehold used approved by the NYPD? Nope. That was an air choke, preventing breath, instead of a blood choke, what is commonly approved by most, if not all, law enforcement agencies nowadays. Was Eric Garner unnecessarily apprehended? I guess so. But then again, I can't seem to find anything online as to why he was in an interaction with the NYPD. Here's the important question though. Why was Eric Garner fighting with the police? The guy had 31 arrests to his name, yet still didn't know that you never win fighting against cops, corrupt or not. The only way you can fight an arrest is to let them pick you up, throw you in jail, then present the evidence of an illegal arrest in court and sue the hell out of the department later on. Eric Garner deciding to fight the cops was the single deciding factor of his death. Not his poor health, not the possibility of being illegally arrested. I say possibility because, like I said, I can't find an actual reason why he was being apprehended, and it wasn't the non-approved choke. Every time you see a video of someone fighting a cop, illegal arrest or not, they are literally taking their life into their own hands due to the deadly weapons on the cop's belt. Any cop doesn't fear getting into a fight. Too much anyway, since the other cops should be near to help out within a matter of minutes. More than he fears having his gun taken and used against him. Same thing with the baton, taser, or pepper spray. When you decide to willingly fight against a cop, you have entered into a cage match that at any time could turn life or death. For that one reason, I never feel sorry for anyone that fights a cop and ends up dead or severely wounded. And if you think the same thing wouldn't happen if an off-duty cop decided to fight an on-duty cop, you are sadly mistaken, or letting the need to push a personal agenda interfere with logic and reasoning.
Versus, it's a clear us versus them, and they felt like they could do that. They could do that. They had the papers were signed. They had the directive. It was obvious that it was within their boundaries to take this guy and to physically assault him and arrest him.
Yeah, and so they don't have empathy.
Yeah,
so if you want to see them have
exactly.
empathy, please, we need to be moral. We need to be human. That's what I'm, like,
Right.
my main message is we have to lead with empathy. That's the starting point of everything. So if I'm going after that guy, I can immediately see that whether there's a law or not, the idea that I'm going to take someone's freedom away, like they took his life away, but they were planning to take his freedom away for essentially nothing in stupid tax that's pennies.
No,
That
he's
is
providing a
preposterous.
service.
Yeah, to somebody.
If you don't have $5 and you want a cigarette, that guy's providing a service.
Yeah, so why don't you let him set up a little booth and he can...
Not only that, didn't he pay taxes on those fucking cigarettes?
Yes!
So what? Jesus Christ! I mean, he's making a little bit of a profit, but who gives a shit?
Totally.
No one's getting hurt. No one. Literally, no one's getting hurt. And the money that they could have made just by eliminating the drug war in taxes would make that look like a pittance.
Poop. Poopity poop. Big poop. The other side of stupid.